All right. We'll go ahead and get started. Thank you guys all so much for joining. I'll go ahead and let me share my screen. All right, welcome in to our Future Edit, our annual webinar that we do talking about the macro trends set to influence our year ahead. For anyone that hasn't joined our webinars or had the chance to meet me yet, my name is Kendall Becker. I am our fashion and beauty director here, overseeing all of our content and trend forecasting at Trendalytics. So if you haven't joined this webinar before, this is one of our favorite ones that we do every single year, setting the tone for all those trends that fall under the macro trend bucket. So these are more so big societal movements that are going to hit multiple touch points, from fashion to beauty, men's to women's, to what movies are coming out and what's happening on social media, and then all of laying the groundwork for all the trends that will come next. Okay, so going through that introduction here, we have five different themes that we will run through. And then, of course, we will absolutely have time to answer questions at the end. Okay, so our first macro trend here is called Gone Analog. So, haven't you heard offline is the new luxury these days? The more offline, the better, resetting your nervous system. It looks different for everybody. But what we're looking at and where this evolution came from is what was next for both old money and fisherman core. So, looking back at 2024 and 2025, we saw this big resurgence of more classical pieces coming in, looking all the way back to 2023 and that wearable wardrobe moment. But this continued to build on, adding in some prep movements as well. Looking at our color palette here, I'm finding this to be incredibly interesting. Of if you joined our webinars within the past year, whether it was one runway, macro trends, there was a lot going on about this near neutral shades. Looking at 2025, there was a lot that had to do with burgundy within leather goods, outerwear, and now I'm really looking at olive to be a big leader, as well as chocolate and a really rich navy. So think of not just like a washed out navy that you've seen time and time again, but really rich and saturated here. Okay, so looking again at societal movements as a whole within fashion, consumer behavior, all of that good stuff, we'll dive into our 3 points for each of these macro trends. So looking at digital detoxes, this is just like the biggest point of conversation. Again, letting into this offline as the new luxury. So this might be the ability to put your phone down and put it on do not disturb on a day-to-day basis. I know a lot more and more people even just keep their phones on DND these days because of those constant distractions, whether it's messages, notifications, all of that. Being able to work without constant promotion. I'm hearing this again more and more, whether it's, an artist or somebody has a small business. And yes, they're great at their craft, but it's the exhaustion of feeling like a content machine, of having to put up stories and this and that, where they're like, I'm not a social media person. I'm, a writer, an artist, whatever it might be. So the stress that comes from there. And then just like the ability to be able to stay present in your day-to-day life, whatever that looks like. So many users are deleting their social media apps, especially like TikTok is always a big one, or people taking moments off of Instagram, going through big unfollowing cleanses to really be more intentional with the information that they're getting on a day-to-day basis. And then even, of course, this is one's a little bit more extreme, but swapping out their smartphones for flip phones or even for digital cameras, of course, was a huge trend looking back at last year. So poet core, this is one of the buzzy ones of the moment, whether, last year looking at fisherman core, poet core is that next one that's coming in. But I do think this is really beautiful though, when you look at it, not just from these cores and aesthetics, that again is obviously very online. So the irony with that. But when you look at it from an art perspective as well, I'm seeing more and more people like channeling different ways just to have fun and have hobbies that they aren't necessarily monetizing, but they're romanticizing like emotion. You've been seeing people talk about like 2026 is the year of yearning. And so it's like, hey, it's okay. It's cool to feel and to be human. And what does that look like? Whether it is art or again in the way that we dress, maybe it is that heritage print coming in, an emphasis on craftsmanship and things being really, really well done. And there's that earthy color palette once again. Finally, looking at travel trends. Into last year, we saw a lot happening around wellness, of course, but this is only growing where people are calling it burnout breaks. So it isn't necessarily wellness based. Like, yes, it could be that you're going on a yoga retreat, but it doesn't have to. It's more so getting remote where people are going to like forests or they're going to different like there's a lot of talk about like Celtic region and like Celtic magic and things of that nature. So or just simply going to upstate, and I'm sure everyone has seen the pictures on Instagram of those like desolate cabins with the one wall that's all glass that like absolutely blows up every fall of influencers going upstate. But anything that falls within that region, right? It doesn't necessarily have to be, I'm going to Canyon Ranch to go on a detox. It can just be going and simply being quiet, being with your thoughts, or spending quality time with your person. Okay. So getting into our data points and our exact trends here. So of course, we're looking at our key trends. These are ones that are starting to kick off now. They're already intriguing from a data perspective, but haven't reached a peak, or this is laying a great groundwork for us that's going to continue to evolve into what's next, what's next, what's next. So of course, the one that I want to kick us off with is this funnel neck jacket. So we've seen utility continue to rise and evolve over the past couple of years. The bomber jacket, even last year, just was, doing great numbers. And so the funnel neck jacket was so popular on the spring summer 2026 runways that it is just continuing on and on here. So you can see it's up 892% in searches to last year. And I always want to remind us too that just when a trend starts to pick up good numbers, we started to talk about this last fall. There's still moments they haven't even hit retail necessarily, or they have in a small way. Or now, okay, maybe the average person in the Midwest has now learned about a funnel neck jacket, but she probably doesn't have one yet. It's not necessarily ready weather-wise. I'm currently in Chicago myself, and this is the coldest I've been in so long. So I'm not wearing a funnel neck jacket, but I can't wait to stock up come around spring. So there's still lots of movement here for spring and even into fall. Getting us into the striped top. So again, talking about that like prep or that old money aesthetic, lots happening there. Olive green, you can see that this is on the rise, up 45% in market adoption. So brands, retailers, including this in their assortment. As well as utility trousers being up 41% in market adoption. And what I want to call out here about utility trousers is this isn't necessarily an over-the-top, very youthful feeling cargo pant, but this can be cool little details, whether it's with closures, stitching, placement of pockets that isn't so crazy, but still gives a utilitarian feel. I think is a really fun way to execute this in a modern lens. As well as vintage handbags. Searches for these are just like through the roof. Everyone's kind of straying away from, I'd say like straying away from an it bag because it's always going to be important. But I do have a lot of conversations both within like, fashion girl circles and regular people outside of the industry, but looking more and more on like Depop and eBay and different ways that they're like, okay, this feels so well made, it's so well priced. How can I access this and also not have the same Prada nylon bag as everybody else, right? So I want to call out here three different ways that this could show up. So getting into J. Crew, of course, we love J. Crew. They're on the up. It looks great. Think of all those great Americana pieces. I think this is awesome. So that's a good source of inspiration as well. And they're doing a lot of things right, which is great to see. Erdem. So looking at them from that like romantic standpoint, right? Like they always do beautiful colors, beautiful trims, these gorgeous feeling vintage florals. And it's really much giving me a lot of Wuthering Heights inspo. We have the Jacob Elordi movie coming out, Wuthering Heights, next month, I want to say. So right, I mean, with anything Jacob Elordi is in, is he's king of my news feed personally. So I'm sure that we're going to see a lot of that pour into the fashion world. Then Christy Dawn, calling this one out. This is a Brentwood-based brand, so very California mom. But still think of like slowing down. What are maybe those values that like she has and she's instilling into her children about maybe it's being like earthy, slowing down. She's maybe going out to Malibu on the weekend. I don't know, up to Ojai. So what are those other ways that, detaching and going analog can look very different for different people? Okay, that's getting us into our next trend here called self-expressed. So what I want to call out here is that this is not maximalism for the sake of it. It's very intentional, it's expressive boldness, and it wants to feel original, something that like only you could put together. On the runways, we saw a lot of this like canary or sunshine yellow. Cobalt is still hanging out with us into 2026. So many blue moments for this year. We're definitely shifting towards a cool tone cycle. Calling out lots of like hits of electric feeling purple. And then even still playing with like orange, and it almost even feels weird, like topaz, like lots of like jewels, but done in a cool, like bright, punchy way. Okay, so especially at Paris Fashion Week in spring, summer 2026. So the runways that were shown in September and October of last year. Once it started to get to like the end of Milan into Paris, there was so much boldness. We're early when New York, Copenhagen like kicked off the season. It felt very minimalist. And then we ended the season completely different. Obviously, whenever I track trends, there's some seasons where it's just unanimous across the board. And this was one that I felt very like anything goes here. So there's a lot of, again, saturation, statement making. When you look at the really big players like Saint Laurent, Valentino, even who was it? Not Miu Miu, but oh my gosh, I'm trying to blanking here. But in Milan, there were some hits of this as well. But Paris especially is where it really, really stood out to me. Oh, Versace. That's what I was thinking. Okay, so then getting us into our personality piece. So these next two, personality piece and anti-trend, go hand in hand here. What I want to call out is that personality piece, though, is sort of just developing your signature style. So maybe that's a color that feels really true to you. Maybe it's a certain piece of jewelry that again it feels like a talisman. It represents a sort of value or a certain aesthetic here. So I think that this is cool and it's a little bit more like personal. How can I showcase my personality out through what I wear, which of course, as we know, is takes us back to the beginning of time, but just in a very intentional and a very bold way right now. And I think this is very, very easily done through accessories. This then brings us into our anti-trend movement. So a lot of our conversations last year was like these burnouts of, oh my God, core this, aesthetic this. It's so exhausting to keep up with. Um, and so this is almost like the antithesis of trend, right? So it's how can I make my outfit feel very unique to me? And it feels like something only I would think to put together. So maybe it's stacking like big statement bracelets, or over, I can pop back to the slide, up on the top corner, like tying a tie like that into a bow. Really cool. So it feels like it has a creative spin to it. And then getting us into our key trends that are popping up. I'm loving this circle skirt. I think that is like so, so fun. We definitely saw a lot of these like big volume plays, whether it was through oversized shoulders. This is huge. It was up 200% in social buzz, in conversations around key influencers. And the same with that circle skirt, up 238%. Really fun. I've seen some like New York girls playing with this for like fun street style outfits. So I think that's really, really cool. Getting us into new iterations of animal print. The big ones that I'm calling out for this year are tiger print, zebra, and then deer print has started to pop up. That's kind of feeling like our softer iteration, which I think that can also go under like a gone analog. But some of these really fun punches here are great. The oversized pendant necklace is up 89% in searches to last year. And this was just a crowd favorite on the runways. So many people were showing this, a lot of the big players, even from New York to Paris. So a great one to be considering. And then that canary yellow is up 21% in searches to last year. So a couple influencers and brands that I do want to call out. Already mentioned the Versace, Saint Laurent, and then oh my gosh, I'm gonna butcher how to say her name, but Emily Sindlev. She's one of my favorite influencers. I want to say she's Copenhagen based. I could be wrong, but she's definitely Copenhagen, Amsterdam, something like that. And she just wears like the coolest really bold printed pieces. She plays with texture a lot. And the way that she does maximalism to me feels very inspirational, digestible, and elevated, versus costume, which I think that it can go that way very easily when we're talking maximalism. But I think she's a great one to look for inspiration at. Okay, well, let's get into optimized here. So I'm combining our evolution of global sports, which we talked about so much in 2025, and this is going to be, be so huge into 2026 as well. We have the World Cup coming. So lots to be talking about here that I'm sure will continue on. But there is a lot of this like dystopian and tech undertone that brings it into a futuristic lens. We also talked about how utilitarian is still important in the way that those details are happening. But again, it's very thoughtful. And I love the color palette here. It feels so futuristic, this like icy tone to these subdued pastels. But also like to call out, these are really the same colors, just done in different shades, right? So it's like instead of olive, we're leaning a little sage. With our blue. It's not quite that icy blue, but it does feel still like futuristic. It's so just like a little bit more subdued. So always like a near neutral, I think is so cool. I love this aloe set down on the bottom right. Just I think it feels really like elevated, minimal. It's not necessarily intimidating on a way to do this. Okay, cool. So let's dive in just a little bit more. Looking at these, like technically speaking. So looking back at 2025, within our data at Trendalytics, we had so many hits from tech fo focused accessories, like smart glasses were just blowing up. Looking up at so many like different hybrid shoes with Solomon coming up. Just lots of different ways that like tech was integrated into accessories. What I do think has been interesting is there's this like evolving standard where everyone wants just whether it's a piece of clothing, a gadget, or whatnot to be optimized, but it doesn't necessarily have to be like, hey, I'm seeking out my Apple Watch or my Aura ring. But these different ways to like keep things powered and having them be optimized per person and their personal needs. So they can pick and choose. But it feels a little bit more seamlessly integrated as this continues to move forward. Okay, so on the go again. As we know, days are getting full. They are, almost everybody is back in office in some way or another, whether it's, popping in for a day or two here and there, or lots of calls to offices back. I actually just saw an article about in like New York, how the office buildings and the real estate's like actually starting to fill back up again, apparently. So that's interesting. But again, I think also with the romanticizing of 2016 that we've been seeing so much of. If you don't subscribe to our newsletter, we're going to talk about it this week. But everyone's posting their like throwbacks to 2016, whether it's like the outfits they used to wear, the music you used to listen to. Everyone's like, it's the last time before like things were good. So there's a lot of romanticization of that online. But something that everyone's talking about, especially in New York, and I'm sure in other big cities, was you would like leave your house. I'm sure a lot of you guys remember with like you had your big tote bag or a big backpack, never knowing when you'd get back, and you'd rush out to that Soul Cycle class to then go straight to the office, to then go to happy hour, to then go here, to then go there, and like who knows if you were going home and what time you were getting there. So looking at like our optimized different like multi-use items, this is huge in beauty. This is huge within even look at like these pants over here. Like if it's done in an athletic material, like I for example, like I teach Pilates on the side because I love it so much. And I have trousers that I'll wear out to an appointment for market, but they're so technical. I could walk straight into Pilates studio. I'm not doing the moves, but I feel as though it could be in that space. So really cool. Also kind of furthers that recession core that we talked so much about in 2025, where people really want to make their investment feel worth it. And then lastly, it gets into this like dystopian feel. Definitely seeing this grunge meets futuristic aesthetic happening within Gen Z. This was so big on the festival circuit last year. This like distressed knits, the hooded looks. We talked about this in our festival report. If you haven't read it yet, if you're a Trend Looks client, definitely check that out in the platform. And if you're not, you can access that on our insights page on our website to download the report. But there was a lot of that happening. Lots of almost like purple, yes, but done in like a really like dark way, lots of charcoal. So it was cool. And same thing, this like really spilled into footwear. Yeah. Okay. So then let's get us into our data to wrap this one up. We have our hybrid sneakers up 607% to last year. A really big, exciting number. Those smart glasses, as mentioned, up 108% in searches. Lots happening with luxury athleisure. People really investing in those pieces that, again, can feel elevated, but also are really comfortable and utilitarian. Utility vests are really big within menswear and more of that forward space being up 26% in market adoption. And then powder blue, just really seeing a lot of success from that ice blue movement the last year or so. Brands to be watching here, Arc'teryx and Solomon are just like ruling menswear and even like women's wear too as well. Like I am dying for a pair of Solomon sneakers. I still don't have them somehow. I'm sure everyone has seen the Arc'teryx knit hat is like the hat of this winter. Just it's like a knit hat with their logo on it. If you haven't seen it yet, it's like everyone's eating it up. And then Marcus Milione here, he's like a menswear influencer in New York, but he like has a brand that's really focused on biking. I'm sure you could wear it to do other workouts, but he posts his workouts all the time and then developed this brand that goes along with it. So pretty cool call out there. Okay, and then I want to get us into our fourth macro trend here, which is called alternative answer. So this is really our evolution of the bohemian effect and how it's evolved. We talked a little bit about this at the end of last year, kind of this like witchy undertone that was happening. So I just want to dive into it further as we get into 2026. And I think like what a lot of people are feeling, no matter your stance, we'll talk a little bit about this more, but like no matter your stance on like politics, state of the world, like whatever it might be, I think a lot of people do feel unsettled in whatever way that is. So it's looking for these other ways to go about things, whether it's like leaning into your manifestation methods, it's changing how you dress, it's maybe like electing someone that maybe you wouldn't normally have, and now you just are looking for something different and you're like ready for change. So I think that there's different ways again to think about it, go about it, but it's this alternative answer, whatever that might be. And I think that's going to be something personal. Okay. So one study that I was seeing just like blow up at the end of 2025 was all of these articles, these studies coming up about how millennials and Gen Z are just simply giving up in terms of financial stability, world stability. It's just like, okay, you were told, hey, you get a degree, you graduate, you should be able to save money, buy a house, start a family. And people are like, if I do everything right, I still can't do that. And I think that they're, kind of started as like there's like an anger and rebuttal to then, the cycle of grief to acceptance. And so a lot of people, there's these all these articles and studies coming out where people are just like, okay, whatever. I'm never going to be able to buy that house. So let me go on that vacation on my bucket list. Let me do that cosmetic procedure. Let me bring small moments of joy to my life. Like, okay, that $10 matcha is not really going to move the needle anyway. So I might as well enjoy my life while I'm here. And who knows, are we even going to be here in 10 years? So it's just very like dark, but romanticizing way to be like living in the moment, sparking joy. you know, do with that what you will. Calling your Etsy witch. This is like such a joke online. We've talked about this in our newsletter and other reports too. But oh my gosh, it is just like over everyone's news feed, even if you aren't super woo-woo or spiritual. But like calling up your Etsy witch for like a cord cutting ceremony to forget about your ex-boyfriend. Or everyone, of course, like getting together at the beginning of January to like make vision boards with the girls, or wearing different talisman jewelry, whether it's a crystal or a symbol or whatnot. And then, of course, like I mentioned, with the political climate, This we won't dive into too much, but if there's an abundance of just like scary news, no matter what your stance is, everyone feels unhappy. So it's looking for change elsewhere. Okay, so then let's get us into our trends and how that this is showing up in fashion. So firstly, looking at asymmetrical hemlines. This was so big on the spring summer 26 runways. I was loving it. It was up 413% amongst key influencers. So again, those are like tastemakers, actual influencers, but also like publications and leading Instagram accounts on the platform, and TikTok as well. And so this was done, I think, just in so many different cool ways, whether it's on tops, on skirts, whatnot. But I think that there's a lot of fun to be had there. Lace trim continued to be up 229% amongst key influencers. So this was really cool as well, where lace just continues to keep evolving and is done in really tasteful and interesting ways. Embroidered velvet is up 126% in market adoption, like really big number there. But again, and it feels very like it feels very witchy. I think we're going to be seeing a lot more velvet this year. Flowy skirts and then big balloon sleeves do continue on with us that we pulled from Bohemian and all the way up. Okay, so calling out our influencers here, in New York, I'm sure everyone knows like our new first lady, and she has a really big, Instagram following of her own, and she's an artist, and also I think just a new generations, people are calling out as like a new generation, like Jackie O sort of vibe, but I think she's like 28 years old, so super youthful. And I think her style is like it's very cool. It's very her own. She has a lot of like darker eye makeup too. So she kind of does give me this little like witchier vibe in a really cool way. So I think it'll be an interesting where she just basically like dresses in a different way that I think brings her own personality in. So I think a lot of people will be like seeking fashion inspiration from her as well. Zimmerman popping up as well, bringing them in again, very romantic, lots of lace and different ways to use it creatively. And then awe-inspired. This is my favorite jewelry brand. They're known for doing talisman jewelry, so different symbols pulled from different cultures, different gemstones that they include, just like really, really cool investment pieces. Like they're, I wouldn't say it's like a high price range, but it's definitely not like an impulse buy for most people. But it's cool for like setting intentions for like maybe that moment in time. Okay, guys, and we are on our last macro trend that we'll get through. Then we have some time for some questions. So this last one here is called Made You Feel. So it's not just enough to lean into a cool factor these days. You have to make your audience feel something in order for your product or your piece of content to make that connection and be memorable. And again, this is one that's going to feel really personal. It's going to show up in a bunch of different ways. But looking back, it's like, okay, looking at our 2025, we saw things like the handbag charms, then turned into Labubus. Then we started to see stacked statement jewelry. There was so much movement in our macro trends last year about like repping your local coffee shop, your workout studio. I'm seeing a lot of like patches and artistry come back when it comes to how to elevate something like denim or a really simple jacket. Okay, so we'll get into this here. So, looking at our community apps and clubs. So, users are over apps like Hinge and even Bumble that has friendship matching. And but they're still looking for community with like-minded individuals that even necessarily isn't really about dating. This might be coming out in person through things like run clubs. There's like lots of speed dating meetups that are happening. Of course, as we know, dating can be like super time consuming. So, I get the appeal of why that's making a comeback. An increasing investment in different types of members clubs. There are so many, New York in particular, with how many different members clubs opened up in the past year. And so you can kind of find more of your people than just like one overarching brand that rules the market there. So I think that's pretty cool. We'll see that continue to evolve. Even like social discovery apps that aren't romance centric. I'm getting like bombarded with ads for this. We'll say my best friend, I'll give her a shout out. She just started a new social app called Voro, which is about like a Venn diagram of mutual friends. So you are like friend group dating, which I think is just a really cool concept. So it could be you're going on a double date, or it could be you move to a new city and you already have a group of girlfriends, but maybe you want some guy friends to hang out with. So I just think it's like really cool and like overlooked sort of aspect of life where, as we talked about in America, we're like missing that third space and that community. So cool ways that people are getting creative to try to bring that into their lives. Okay. And then looking at our imperfectly perfect. So this almost like a romanticization of bringing like mistakes and novelty into whether it's art or fashion, which makes something feel one of a kind, where people almost are like loving that mistake on like a sweater knit or something like that, or like on an illustration. Like it's just something that brings this more like real factor to it that I think is going to continue to be just so important. It feels human. And then lastly, that exactly what I mentioned, that like stop you in your scroll, where so many people, as we mentioned at the beginning, they are looking for these digital detoxes. They're taking them. So when they open their phone back up, it is so important that you take advantage of that opportunity to grab their attention with your content or your product. There has to be that emotional element to it that they see the value. Okay, guys, so this is it. So as you mentioned, we have varsity patches. Those are rising up 267% in market adoption. So really cool to see those patches, that creativity come back. Stacked bracelets, as I mentioned, also in self-expressed. Those statement bracelets were huge on the runways, and we'll continue to see that happen in person. And then slogan tees being up 100% amongst key influencers. I'm seeing so much happening with this slogan tee, which I will just pop us down to like Nude Project, for example. This is one of my favorite brands right now. They're based in Barcelona. They do men's, women's, and unisex. And they partner with different artists to do drops. And so typically you'll see that with like streetwear and it's just t-shirts, but they've blown it out of the water on the amount that they're covering. Like they have cool dresses, and they have like interesting trousers that then like are also printed, bags, like it's literally everything versus when I've seen this in the past, it's so much like hoodies, t-shirts. So I think they are like one to watch. They're very cool. And then like these artistic leaning florals, like we mentioned, there's more of this like artisanal element, whether they look drawn or leaning into our gone analog, like wallpaper floral or a toile even, and painted denim being a really big player in the contemporary market. Hey, and that is our presentation. Thank you so much for joining me today. I hope this helped you get your wheels turning and get excited for 2026. I'll quickly pop us over to our ways to get connected. You're always welcome to email hello@trendalytics.co if you're interested in diving into the platform, getting all this great data to help support you in all of your trend initiatives ahead, whether you are designing, figuring out ways to market, and just re-merchandising, all of that good stuff. And then, of course, follow us on social media. Now we can do a little bit of questions here. We have a bit of time to dive in. Oh, sorry. Okay, so our first question, who was the last brand and influencer in the final trend? Sorry, I got excited and I jumped ahead. The last brand was Loewe. So again, I've been talking about Loewe for so long. And I think that they just have done such an incredible way about bringing these like almost like whimsical ways into whimsical pieces into a very it was something with a C. Oh, okay. Sorry. I'll finish talking about Louis, but I think they've done just such a wonderful job with like the balloon heel, the like painted the nail polish heel, like all of these really fun ways that have evolved accessories. So I think that that's great. The last influencer that I mentioned, you will all get this deck, so you'll be able to link out. His name is Cedric Ebernese. Again, I gotta butcher that name. He's a French influencer, really cool. It's like I want to say he's based in Paris, and he just does like a really lot with like menswear, smaller brands, this very artistic driven streetwear. So we love following him. Very cool. Yeah, any other questions? And like I said, you will absolutely get this deck. Anybody that signed up, even if they could not attend, you'll be able to access the recording and the deck. And then we have a full report that even has more information than what we shared with you now. Oh, yes. Okay. One more question popped in. Who's the name of the influencer from Copenhagen? Okay, so her name is Emily Sindlev. Emily is spelled Emili, and then Sindlev is Sidlev. Really cool. She's been around the game for a little bit, but she's like one of my favorite follows. And like I said, I'm very much a minimalist, and I get a lot of value both from, overarching trend and my own personal style. So highly recommend a follow. We'll have that deck out. Another question just popped in. We'll have that deck out to you by tomorrow at the latest, but hopefully this afternoon. Yeah, anybody else? Any other questions? I know that was a lot of me talking, so I don't blame you if you don't want to hear more. But like I said, you will get this deck. You'll get the recording for anyone on your team who wasn't able to join. And if you have any other questions that pop up later, please email hello@trendalytics.co. And we are happy to help you answer anything and set you on the right track for 2026. All right. Thank you, everybody.